Single dad janitor stops at $10 billion merger with one sentence. What the woman CEO did next shocked the boardroom. The boardroom was polished perfection, glass walls, sleek leather chairs, and a long mahogany table that gleamed under the fluorescent lights. At the head sat Veronica Steele, the iron-willed CEO of SteelTech Industries. Today was meant to be historic. The signing of a $10 billion merger deal with Titan Corp. Investors were buzzing, lawyers ready, cameras waiting. Everyone assumed this was destiny. Everyone except the janitor. Ethan Carter, a widowed single father, had been quietly mopping floors and emptying trash cans in that skyscraper for 5 years. He was invisible to them until the moment he wasn't, as Veronica prepared to sign. Ethan stepped forward from the corner of the room, broom in hand. Gasps filled the air. He wasn't supposed to speak here, but his words silenced the room. "Ma'am, you're about to sell your father's life's work to the same company that bankrupted my wife's hospital. They cut corners, hid debts, and put profits above people. This deal isn't growth, it's poison." The board froze. The lawyers frowned. Veronica's pen trembled mid-air. The janitor's voice didn't waver. Years of grief and quiet observation gave him a courage none of the executives had. He laid out, in plain English, what others had missed: hidden clauses, offshore accounts, patterns of corruption he'd overheard while scrubbing conference tables late at night. Titan Corp won't merge, Ethan finished. They'll consume and kill everything SteelTech stands for. For a heartbeat, no one breathed. Then Veronica leaned back slowly, eyes narrowing. She realized the janitor wasn't bluffing. He was right. She ordered the lawyers to pause and demanded an immediate review. Within minutes, Titan Corp's shell games began to unravel under scrutiny. The billion-dollar deal collapsed in flames. The board expected Veronica to explode in fury at the janitor for speaking out. Instead, she stood, walked toward him, and did the unthinkable. She offered him a chair at the table. "This man just saved us $10 billion and our company's soul. From today, he's not a janitor. He's my chief ethics officer." The room erupted in shock. Ethan blinked, clutching his broom like a shield. He had only spoken to protect her legacy, but now he was being asked to shape it. And when Veronica's eyes met his, there was something else: their respect, gratitude, and perhaps the beginning of something more. Because sometimes, one honest sentence from the most overlooked voice in the room can change everything. The skyscraper towered over the city, glass gleaming against the morning sun. On the top floor, the boardroom buzzed with anticipation. A $10 billion merger with Titan Corp was hours from being finalized. SteelTech, once a family-built empire, was about to take a new direction. At the head of the table sat Veronica Steele, a woman in her early 40s, sharp suit, sharper mind. Known as the Iron Queen of Wall Street, she never let emotions cloud her judgment. Investors worshipped her, competitors feared her, and today, the cameras would celebrate her as the woman behind one of the biggest deals of the decade. The board members whispered, "This will double our market cap. She'll go down in history for this. We'll all be rich." In the corner, unnoticed as always, was Ethan Carter, the janitor. A single dad in his late 30s, his uniform slightly faded, hands calloused. Every night, he scrubbed those marble floors while listening to executives talk carelessly, thinking the help couldn't possibly understand. But Ethan listened, and he remembered the moment that changed everything. Veronica raised the fountain pen to sign the deal. Cameras clicked. Investors leaned forward. Ethan's voice cut through the silence. "Excuse me, ma'am." Every head turned. Gasps filled the air. A janitor had spoken in the middle of a $10 billion signing. A lawyer snapped, "This is a closed meeting. Step outside immediately." But Veronica raised a hand. Her instinct told her to listen. "No, let him speak." Ethan's voice was calm, but carried weight. "I've cleaned these halls for 5 years. long enough to hear what Titan Corp doesn't want you to know. This isn't a merger, it's a takeover. They'll strip your assets, bury your workers, and in 5 years, Steel Tech will be a name on a gravestone. The room froze. One executive scoffed. He's a janitor, not an analyst. But Ethan didn't flinch. His jaw tightened. Tell that to my wife. She died because Titan Corp shut down the only hospital in our county after promising to modernize it. They cut costs, fired staff, and when she needed care, there was none. They put profit over people, and now you're handing them the keys to do it again. The pen slipped slightly in Veronica's hand. The boardroom turns the lead lawyer, sneered. Do you have proof of this nonsense? Ethan looked him dead in the eye. I don't have spreadsheets, but I have ears. I've heard Titan Corp's executives brag about offshore accounts while I scrubbed this very table. I've picked up shredded documents they thought were gone. You think I'm invisible? I see more than all of you. The boardroom fell into uneasy silence. One director whispered, Could he be right? Veronica, usually unshakable, set the pen down. For the first time in years, she looked uncertain. Then her gaze sharpened. Run a clause check on Section 14C. She ordered the legal team. They flipped frantically through pages, and then pale faces. Hidden within was a loophole granting Titan Corp full control of Steel Tech's patents after 2 years. Another clause tied their finances to Titan Corp's offshore shell companies. The deal wasn't a partnership. It was a slow execution. The shock the cameras had stopped clicking. The investors were whispering in panic. And Veronica Steele, the most unshakable CEO on Wall Street, stood slowly from her chair. She walked toward Ethan. He expected security. He expected to be fired. Instead, she extended her hand. Mr. Carter, you just saved this company. The boardroom erupted in disbelief. He's just a janitor. One director protested. Veronica's eyes snapped to him. No, he's the only man in this room who had the courage to speak the truth. Turning back to Ethan, she said, From today, you're no longer our janitor. You're my chief ethics officer. The room went silent. Ethan blinked, broom still in hand. He had spoken only for his wife's memory, never expecting reward. But Veronica wasn't finished. Her voice softened, just enough for only him to hear. And maybe, when this meeting is over, you can tell me more about the kind of man who sees what everyone else ignores. The $10 billion merger crumbled. Titan Corp was exposed. Steel Tech's stock surged not because of the deal, but because of the CEO who listened to the janitor and Ethan. He walked out of that boardroom not just as a single dad with a mop but as the man who saved a legacy with one sentence. Ethan. Carter's alarm rang at 4:30 a.m. sharp. He moved quietly through the tiny 2-bedroom apartment, careful not to wake his daughter, Lily, who was curled up on a thrift store mattress, her little stuffed rabbit in her arms. He kissed her forehead before pulling on his faded blue janitor uniform. The same uniform he wore 6 days a week while cleaning the gleaming towers of corporate power he would never sit in, at least. That's what he thought. 5 years ago, Ethan had been a construction foreman with a steady job and a wife who dreamed of opening a bakery. But when Titan Corp closed their county hospital under the guise of cost restructuring, his wife's medical emergency turned fatal. Ethan had been left with Lily and a crushing bitterness toward faceless corporations that traded lives for profit. Now, every night, he scrubbed boardrooms, emptied trash cans filled with shredded documents, and overheard conversations that executives assumed a janitor wouldn't understand. He had become invisible, but he was always listening. High above the city, Veronica Steele ran Steel Tech with the precision of a general. Her father had built the company from scratch, engineering breakthroughs in green energy. Veronica had turned it into a global powerhouse, but in doing so, she had earned a reputation: cold, ruthless, untouchable. Now she was preparing for her greatest victory, yet a $10 billion merger with Titan Corp. The deal would make Steel Tech twice as large. Investors were salivating. The media had already written the headlines. Steel seals the deal. But to Veronica, it was more than money. She had spent her life trying to step out of her father's shadow, to prove she was just as capable. Titan Corp's CEO promised her this merger would cement her legacy. What she didn't know was that it would nearly destroy it. The boardroom was a temple of power-glass walls, chrome fixtures, and a mahogany table that gleamed under fluorescent lights. Dozens of executives sat in their sharpest suits, lawyers lined the walls, and news cameras were ready. Veronica sat at the head of the table, pen in hand. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began smoothly, "this merger will ensure future for the next 100 years. Applause rippled through the room. In the corner, Ethan mopped silently, head down. He wasn't supposed to be there during high-level meetings, but tonight the cleaning schedule had been shifted. He had intended to slip out quietly, but then he saw the contract, and he recognized names, clauses, hidden traps. He had heard Titan Corp executives brag about these very strategies months earlier, while wiping fingerprints off their whiskey glasses. Something inside him snapped as Veronica lowered her pen to sign. Ethan spoke. "Ma'am, don't." The room froze, heads turned. Gasps echoed. A janitor had spoken in the middle of a $10 billion signing. One lawyer barked, "Security, get him out." But Veronica raised a hand. Her instincts told her there was something here. "No, let him speak."